Welcome to Kinky Knots Cafe. Proactive is the way, where we provide you tools and resources to enhance your mind, body, and spirit. Get ready, folks. Let us nurture you from the inside out. Welcome back, friends. The final episode of Season 2, Kinky Knots Cafe's Proactive is the Way. In this final episode for the season, I reconnected with Terry as we discussed the idea of finishing what you start. In this episode, we will learn how to better understand ourselves, the vices we create or permit that prevent us from focusing, following through, and finishing. Make sure to stick around after this episode until the end as we wrap up with highlights from our supplemental book reading by Janelle Yager, How to Finish Everything You Start, The Tangential Mind, and this season by highlighting our next season, Season 3, Ascension, The Glow Up. All right, let's get into it. Focus, finish, Fantastique with Terry Tucker. Welcome back, Terry.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me back. I'm really looking forward to talking with you today.
Oh, excellent. Definitely looking forward to talking to you as well. Now, folks, if you don't recall, I'm just going to give a quick overview of who Terry Tucker is. We had him on the show, our season 2, episode 10. But Terry Tucker, he is a motivational speaker, author, and an international podcast guest on the topics of motivation, mindset, and self-development. Terry is the author of the book Sustainable Excellence 10 Principles to Leading Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life. He has been featured in Authority, Thrive, Global, and Human Capital Leadership magazines, along with being quoted and featured in the new book Audaciousness, Your Journey to Living a Bold and Authentic Life by Maribel Ortega and Helen Strong. All right. So last time Terry and I connected, we were on the episode season 2, episode 10, The World is My Oyster. And Terry had provided us at that time just some really amazing uh, perspectives about life in general, focusing on his life designs, his various ventures in life, and how he had to prototype and experiment to find success. Today, folks, we are bringing Terry back for our final episode of the season, Focus, Finish, Fantastique. Terry, thank you so much for joining us. Please, before we begin, tell me how has life been over the past 7 months since we last spoke?
Life has been great. Our daughter is in the military, and she and her husband, we found out, are coming back to the area where my wife and I live and next spring. So we're
Oh
really
my gosh,
excited that yeah,
that's
that they're going to be living with
awesome.
us. So that's probably the biggest news. My cancer is still being stable, I guess, for lack of a better
Okay.
word, and that. So I have nothing to complain about. I'm very lucky, very fortunate.
Very, very good. I am glad to hear that things have been going so well. I often think about you, and every now and again, I get to see you on LinkedIn. And so I really, really am happy to hear that you're still thriving, still progressing, still being motivated, even though you have so many different life experiences being thrown at you. And then the fact that your daughter is coming back. Now, let me tell you about girls. Girls, when they come back, let me tell you, they love to take care of their dad. They love to take care of their dad. And when we last spoke, you did share that you guys have a very good and close relationship. So that is definitely going to be a blessing for you and your family.
It really is, and we're very fortunate. We're very lucky. They live in Florida now, so
Oh,
it's
wow.
they're about two-thirds of the way across the United States from us, and
That is
that so
far.
it
Yes.
is. And we really, it's hard for me to travel being in a wheelchair and not having a
Right.
leg and stuff. So
Mm.
it's going to be great to have them back with us, in at least in the same area. I mean, they'll be a couple hours away, but hey, that's close enough. We can get there by
Hey,
car.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, that is definitely a blessing. So I'm glad that she's doing that. And leaving Florida, I know that has to be tough, boy, that weather. And you're in Colorado, right? Where are
Correct.
you?
Yep.
Colorado, yeah, because you about to go to so cold weather. Colorado has some interesting seasons, don't you? You probably like Ohio a little bit.
I mean, in a
All four
way,
seasons.
yeah. I mean, but Colorado's kind of weird in that weird in a good way, in that
Okay.
their winters. I mean, we could get 25 inches of snow today, and
Okay.
tomorrow it'll be 50 degrees and sunny.
You're, yeah, bipolar.
It's not like the Midwest where we grew up, that it's like, okay, winter comes, it's gloomy, it's dark, there's a
Okay.
lot of snow, and it doesn't change until spring. Colorado in the winter kind of has sometimes a spring like atmosphere to it.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't know that. I didn't know that, but I still, ooh, Colorado. I was like, I don't know about Colorado, but
Well,
you seem to be
both
doing
my
very well there, huh?
yes. Yeah, I mean, both my daughter and her husband went to the Air Force Academy, which is in Colorado, is in Colorado
Oh,
Springs. So they're kind of
okay,
used to this, and they actually wanted to come back. It's like we want to come back to Colorado because I mean, it's Florida. There's not a lot of change of
right.
seasons and
Oh,
things.
no seasons, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. Well, good, good. Well, good news. So, folks, there you have it. Terry's doing very well. Thank you so much for giving us an update on what's new. Once again, welcome back, Terry. We are wrapping up our season 2 of Proactive is the Way. Oh my God. I was just telling folks, telling Terry actually that this has been quite an interesting year, folks, trying to get this podcast going. And I wanted to end my podcast on this idea or notion of finishing something that you start, right? And I thought, well, there's got to be some sort of resource that helps us understand how do we do this most effectively. Because as I was telling Terry, I have been navigating Insanity 8.0. It's like my eighth year of just absolute insanity, but I've been doing it pretty well. And I just wanted to get a better perspective on, as life continues to throw different things at you, how can we stay on the right path and learn to finish the things that we start. So we are reading a couple of books, one by Jan Yager, and the one that we're actually focusing on for our podcast today is the one by Peter Hollins, Finish What You Start. And Peter's main objective, what I really like, is that he's trying to help us better understand ourselves. What are some of the devices that we create or that we permit? So, external forces that prevent us from finishing what we start. And so, I wanted to get your perspective, Terry, because you've been very successful. I mean, I truly admire you. Last time I had you on, and my sister, she didn't get to interview you with me, but when she saw the interview, she was like, "Oh my God, I like this guy. I really love him. You're motivated." And once again, as I mentioned earlier, no matter what life has thrown at you, you've been very successful in finishing the things that you set out to do. But I would like to know, so talk to me, because I'm sure it could not have always been easy. I'm sure you had to develop and grow into this space, or maybe you have always been like that. You can tell me. But can you talk to me a little bit about a time that you had a project or an endeavor that you worked on in which you struggled to finish, or you put it on the back burner, never picked it up again? What was that endeavor?
Yeah, you sent me the questions beforehand, and I was kind of thinking about this. And being an author, having written a book, I I remember reading an article that said 80% of people who start a book never finish the book. And my wife and I are kind of cut out of the same mold. I mean, I don't care how bad the book is, we'll finish it. You know,
Uh-huh.
it really doesn't matter. But most people won't. They won't pick it up because they're not interested. And I think back to when I first started in business, when I got out of college, I think the two reasons why I really didn't want to or didn't give everything to a project or something like that was either one, I didn't have all the information. I didn't feel I had everything I needed to handle it, or two, it just didn't interest me. You know, I wasn't interested at all in doing this. And you know, it kind of goes back to how do we approach life? And, you know, I've mentioned I've been dealing with cancer for 12 years, and I don't like going to therapy. I hate going to therapy. It's uncomfortable and things like that. But there's two handles that we can grab, and you got to pick one every day. It's do I have to or do I get to? So, do
Mm.
I have to get up this morning and go to work, or do I get to get up this morning and go to work? Do I have to get up and go to treatment, or do I get to get up and go to treatment? It's all how you approach it. It's all how you look at it. And, you know, so many people just, you know, oh, I don't like that. I'm not interested. And I think social media really hurts us as well, because if we get into a project and then all of a sudden, oh, wait a minute, I got a message. So we stop, we lose our focus. And I don't know about you, Toya, but for me, if I lose my focus, it takes me that much longer to kind of get back into the groove of doing what I was doing. And then if I get another message, now I've lost focus again. So it's that kind of back and forth. And one of the things that I do, I'm working on another book right now, and I find that in the morning, I am much more focused, much more sort of on track than I am in the afternoon. So I schedule more of my podcasts and things like that in the afternoon. And I spend whatever hours I can focusing on the book and just get rid of the social media and all the distractions.
Yeah, that's a good point that you brought up. We had in the book, he actually talks about this. Hollins actually talks about the fact that um, multitasking is how he framed it. Multitasking is truly a word or an idea that has not proven to be very effective for a multitude of individuals. He talked about multitasking from the standpoint that you're speaking about it with regards to technologies taking you off track, social media, etc. And when he was sharing this, I was talking about the whole idea of multitasking from a work perspective in terms of when we're at our job. I know that I was in HR and I was a jack of all trades, a master of one. And I was like, I would have to do all these multiple projects. And I was a lone ranger most of the time. I had a team, my boss, but my boss would give me work, give me all my projects, and then I would have to facilitate them. And I mean, like, I got them done, but I was not very effective and I could have done them faster. And one of my bosses, she was a Jewish woman. I really loved having deep conversations with her because she was just on this whole other level with her thought perspective. But she had shared with me, she said, multitasking, don't fall into that trap because it's not very effective. And this was like 10 years ago. No, longer. I'm sorry, like almost 20 years ago, she shared this with me. But she said, where you will excel, where you will do well is if you can learn to treat every project like Tupperware. And what I mean by that is put every project within its own Tupperware. When you get ready to work on something, you take one Tupperware, open it, fully flush it out, fully do what you can do. Get up to the point where you can't do anymore, close it, and put it to the side, right? And so when she shared that with me some up teen years ago, I tell you, I became so much more effective, right? I became so much more effective at getting my projects done and not feeling overwhelmed. And to the point where now I can do things with ease. Like I just move from one task to another because I give it that focus that it needs.
Mhm. Yeah,
Right.
I think you're right. And I find, and I wish I remember who said this because it wasn't me, so I'm not going to take credit for it. But I find my life now kind of focuses on this, where every day there's like one major project,
Mhm.
probably two kind of middle of the road projects, and then maybe three small little tasks that I need to accomplish. And I've got to figure those out. You know, what's the main thing I'm going to focus on today? Is it going to be writing the book? Is it I'm doing a podcast? What am I? What's the main thing? And then what are the two kind of, well, they're not as important as the one thing I'm doing that I can spend my time on. And then what tasks do I need to sort of do to set myself up for doing that tomorrow, doing that
Yeah.
same thing tomorrow? So I never consciously thought about it that way, but I really, that's kind of how I organize my day. What's the main thing I got to get accomplished? What two middle kind of, they're not going to be really taxing on my brain or whatever. And
Right.
then what other kind of tasks do I need to set myself up to do it again tomorrow? And
Mhm.
I find it's a real effective way to get things done because you compartmentalize. See, I
Yeah.
should have said Tupperware, where you just, I got my Tupperware and I'm
Right.
focusing on that thing. And then I put the lid back on it. And now I move to the next thing. And when those are
Mhm.
done, I put the lid back on it. So yeah, I think that's a great way to look at life.
Right, absolutely. And I like what you said about having kind of like your top three or four things that you're working on with one as the main focus. Peter Hollins had also brought up the fact that we need, what we tend to do is we tend to overwhelm ourselves by having a multitude of projects and trying to do them all simultaneously and not really take a hard look at what's important right now. And if you even think about project planners, I was thinking about project planners, they're so good. If you think about the strategies that they use in order to get a multitude of projects done, they are always taking a look at that top project, top two or three, and then they're devising a plan. And I think where we get lost is that we tend to just not think about our plan, our
Yeah.
strategy for tackling things. We just dive right into it and then realize, oh, backtrack, right? And realize that, oh, we should have planned a little bit better, been more thoughtful about that planning. And so, talk to me a little bit about before you got into this space where, because you said you didn't really even think about it, this is just kind of how you've naturally gravitated into your own flow. Were there any devices that you found that you possessed within yourself that hindered you from getting to this ultimate space that you are in now, where you just are kind of flowing?
Yeah, I think, I called my company Motivational Check. And motivation is a word that gets thrown around a lot today, where
Mhm.
you got to be motivated and all that kind of stuff. Even though I call my company Motivational Check, I don't think that's enough. I don't think, and motivation is something that's intrinsic. It comes from you. Nobody can motivate you. It's like, come on, I'm going to be your motivation today. No, that's got to come from you. And what I like to talk about is sort of think of a three-legged stool, with one leg being motivation, with another leg being discipline, and with a
Mhm.
third leg being good habits. And just like a three-legged stool, if any one of those either doesn't exist or is out of balance, you're going to be kind of off center. You're not going to be centered at all. So, if you're highly motivated, but you don't have good habits, then it's going to be hard to be successful. If you've got great habits and you're disciplined, but you have no motivation, again, very hard to be successful or get a project done, whatever you're looking at. And this, if you're highly motivated and you got great habits, but you're not disciplined enough to implement those habits, very hard. So I think you need all three in order to be successful. And if
Mhm.
you don't, like I said, I think you're going to be out of balance in your life, and it's going to be much more difficult to be successful, whatever you're doing, whether you're trying to write a book, whether you're doing a project, whether you're managing a team, whatever it ends up being. If you're not balanced, if you're not centered, it's going to be very hard to be successful in your life.
Yeah, I like that what you said. It is a three-pronged approach, and Peter has a three-pronged approach that he highlights within his book. But that number, I really like discipline, that whole idea of being disciplined and consistency. You know, sometimes we are not consistent in our practice, and what we have to accomplish. And because we are not consistent and we are over here, we are, you know, in a multitude of different areas, we just truly lack the ability to be disciplined enough to follow through and finish. And so yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's not just motivation, and I agree with you there. There are a number of different faculties or a number of different characteristics or traits that we have to exude. I will say personally, one that gets me is that I tend to, and he actually talked about this in the book, is I tend to do a lot of thought processing in my head.
Okay.
Even for this podcast, I do a lot of thought processing in my head, but I don't write everything down. I have these note cards. I keep I keep these note cards. I don't know if you can see that. I
Yeah.
keep these note cards next to me, and every time I have a thought, because my mind, I don't know if this is a woman thing or, you know, a sex, but my mind, it goes in 100 different places, and I have these note cards next to me to write down a thought. And what I found, even with you, is that when I came to creating my questions, etc., well, I had a note card with all the questions that I had just created over a matter of weeks. That is absolute insanity. I know that's probably not the most effective. Most people would just sit down and do that. But as I told you, I've been navigating Insanity 8.0. I had to like re strategize the way that I function. But anyway, so yeah, but within that, I had to be consistent, right? So I said to myself, every time you have a thought, Toya, make sure you're jotting it down so you don't lose it. I had to be disciplined enough to really say, okay, you know what? Now it's time. Terry's looking, oh, you probably weren't looking for your questions, but I don't like to interview without you having an idea of what the heck we are going to be talking about. I want you to be prepared as I am going to be prepared. And so, you know, I said, okay, let's put this all together. And I had my moment where I spent that time and just put everything together so that I can provide it to you so that you can be prepared. And so, yeah, so we have to use these different faculty or these different characteristics, these traits, bring these all out in order for us to be able to find success. So you talked a little bit about motivation, right? You talked a little bit about discipline. What are some other key attributes that you find that you possess or changes within your behavior that you had to make to help you overcome and find success?
Yeah, it's a great question. And Tony, I think, you know, if we go back to, you know, the one major project, the two kind of minor projects, and then maybe the three tasks that we need to get done, I think it's human nature that we don't tackle we don't like hard things. Hard things are difficult. So
Yeah.
we do the easy things. We do the
Hmm.
easy things first. And like I said, for me, the focus where I'm most focused, where I'm most engaged is first thing in the morning. So if I spend my time doing those simple things that may wear me out, now when I have to go to that big task that I'm working on maybe in the middle of the day now, all of a sudden I'm not as focused, I'm not as engaged and things like
Hmm.
that. So I think again, going back being consistent or disciplined, whatever you want to call it, we tend to want to go to the little easy things first because hey, we'll get those done.
Right.
I would tell people to focus on that hard thing, that difficult thing, that thing that's really challenging you
Hmm.
at this point early in the day. And most of us are. We're much more focused statistically, research wise. The research bears out that we are much more engaged first thing in the morning than we are, you know, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when we're all kind of
Yes.
like, I need a nap, you
Yeah.
know, and that kind of thing, you know,
Yes.
and I've been there a lot and that.
Hmm.
So I think that's one of the big things is we like to do the easy because the hard
Hmm.
is difficult, but the
Yeah.
hard is going to make you better. It's going to make
Right.
you a more consistent. It's going to make you more intelligent. It's going to make you believe in yourself more that I can handle difficult things. So I would tell you, tackle the difficult things first. let the
Mhm.
easy things go till the end of the day when you need a nap, because you're not going to have to be as engaged for those things.
You are so spot on with that. And I think Peter Hollins, he looked at it a little bit different. He thought to tackle the easier things first so that you'll get
Okay.
them done. But I was like, I don't agree with that. I believe that you do have to tackle the hard things earlier in the day. I think that because you are, and it does, statistics does show that if you do tackle the hard things during the day, you're just a little bit more focused. You have, and I don't know what it is, there's a state, a brain state, I can't recall what it is, but that you possess during the day. And you just are more alert, more attuned, and more creative during that time. And there's a state night owl as well. So they also state that late in the night, that might be a possibility as well, because you do have some individuals, and it's rare, but some individuals who in the night, they tend to be a little bit more creative because there's less distractions. So, but yeah, I do like that. I do think for me, I'm aligned with you in that when I wake up in the morning, my thought process, and even working out, I was telling Tiffany, I was like, does this ever happen to you when you're working out? You just get like a boatload of information dumped into your head, and it's like my brain is just working at overload, and I always have to keep some note cards next to me, so whatever thoughts come into my head, I can jot them down, because it's almost spiritual. I was like, it's almost spiritual. It's almost like when I'm working out, I'm getting all my guidance, my thoughts, my ideas from that respective experience. I'm sure there's a study going to be done on that. But I, I wondered where that came from, but it always happens in the morning. If I'm doing it in the morning, more productive, my thoughts are more clear, etc. So yeah, great. That's great. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. If you could provide advice to folks who struggle with finishing, what would that one piece of advice be?
Well, that's a
You can
great.
share more if you'd like.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess let me try to. I mean, at least for me, there's. I think it's more important the processes that you use. A lot of times we get talk about what are your goals? Well, I want to accomplish this. I want to get this project done. I want to get that done. I don't have goals. If you ask me what my goals were, I wouldn't be able to tell you what my goals are. I focus more on my processes. Are my processes optimized? Do I have the things in place that I need to be successful at certain times during the day? Am I doing the right things at the right time? I mean, if I got up in the morning and spent an hour and a half doing emails, that's like you say, I'm like you. My brain is engaged first thing in the morning. Emails are not something that really engages me. I need to focus on that big project of the day at that time. Emails can always wait till the afternoon and things like that. So I guess I would suggest to your audience, find find the things that you're doing, the processes that you do every day, and ask yourself, are those optimized, or can I do them in a different way, or can I do them at a different time, and things like that, to determine how I can be as successful based on you. Like you said, you're right. I know people who are authors that write at night because that's when they're the most clear, that they get the most done, and less distractions. The family's in bed, that kind of
Yep.
stuff. The
Right.
phone's not ringing, people aren't texting them.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't work for me. So figure out for yourself how
Mm-hmm.
that works, what's most effective for you, and
Mm-hmm.
then optimize those processes so you can be successful every day.
Mm-hmm. So tell me, because one thing you said that caught my attention was is that you said you don't have goals that you necessarily set. So how do you go about trying to determine what's important if you don't possess goals?
I think I know what my values are. And my values determine the things that I'm going to be involved in. Yeah, I mean, there are people that have come to me that'll be like, I want you to do that. You should have your own podcast, and you should use my AI software to develop your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, that doesn't align with my values. I don't want my podcast to be an AI driven podcast. I can't tell you how many meetings I've had with people. Hey, I know you like to write. We can use our AI software and we could have your book done in 30 days. Like, no, I want my brain to come up with a podcast, my brain to come up with a book and things like that. So I know what my values are. And I think the other thing is you got to be willing to say no to people. And really successful people, if you look at it, they say no a lot. No, I'm not going to do that. That, I know this is more important with my time. And we all have a very limited amount of time. And, as you got 8 hours, 10 hours, maybe 12 hours if you're a crazy workaholic, but that's still not a lot of time. And if you're focusing on all these things that are kind of not aligning with your values or who you are, you're not going to be happy. You're not going to be fulfilled. You're not going to be successful. So know what your values are. And I think those will drive the projects or the people that you get involved with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. I like what you said about process too. A lot of people, when we do things, as I shared earlier, start an initiative or an endeavor, we're always backtracking because we haven't identified our process, our strategy for how we are going to manage a particular endeavor. And then we end up, phasing out of it or losing momentum because we didn't have a process. So, for example, with my podcast, if I do a podcast, I'm planning my entire season. Why? I can't do it day by day. My entire season has to be planned. I have to know what I'm doing. And then I fill in, right, as I'm going through, okay, well, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. But for the most part, I have to have everything lined up. And that's how I've found success with being able to keep ideas, with able to staying fresh, with being able to execute on the podcast. So I do like what you said there with regards to process. And then, of course, yeah, your standards, your values. This is something that we have been speaking on for the entire year. My entire focus. I'm a thematics girl. I have to have a theme when I do stuff. So our entire year was on setting standards. We had realized that my sister and I was like, wrote down my standards. These are certain things. This is how I live. I will say no to these. I say yes to these, but I never really thought about them in a very organized or thoughtful manner. I've just always just kind of gone with the flow. And this whole year has been all about, just making sure we understand, well, what do we value? And as Ray Dalio had shared, when you have these principles, these standards, your playbook, and you go to make a decision, you're so much more effective at decision making because you know what you value, you know which direction you want to go, and it's just that much more thoughtful. It's that much more better for you when you have your standards and you are aligned with your standards. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Sure.
All right. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us today, Terry?
I guess let me tell you one more story, if I may, and it kind of goes along with exactly what you just said. Jesse Itzler is part owner of the Atlanta Hawks, the National Basketball Association, and he's married to a woman by the name of Sarah Blakely. You may have heard of Sarah Blakely. She's the founder of a woman's undergarment company called Spanx. And Itzler tells the story about how when she started that company, she had one prototype and $5,000. That's it. And it's now a multi-$100 million company, if maybe not approaching $1 billion in that. And he said, she had been a door-to-door fax salesperson. Now, I don't think we hardly ever use faxes anymore, but that was her specialty. She understood sales. She didn't understand HR. She didn't understand marketing. She didn't understand distribution or manufacturing. But his comment was kind of like you. She knew what her values were. She knew what she wanted to do, and kind of like your podcast, jumped in and started to do it. and then filled in those things. I'll get my guests. I'll get what we're going to talk about. No, I don't want that person on. No, I want this person on. Whatever. So I mean, what you said about how you run your podcast is the same way successful people run their multi-million-dollar corporations. Know what your values are, but don't wait. And I think that's the other problem. A lot of times we can get paralyzed. It's like, oh, wait a minute. Ooh, no, I can't start yet because I don't know this or I don't know that.
Oh,
We
wait.
always think that getting to the top of the mountain, that's what life is about. Life is about the journey to get to the top of the mountain. So wherever you are, just jump in and start and figure it out as you go along, as you said, based on your values and the things that you want to do, your principles, your playbook, etc.
Excellent. Ooh, you are awesome. I got chills, folks. Did y'all get chills? Because I got chills. I love how you ended. This was perfect, Terry. I just once again want to thank you so much. You are always a blessing to have, to be in front of, and just to learn from. And I truly value your perspective. And just thank you. Thank you so much for being here on Proactive is the Way.
Well, Toya, thanks for having me on. As always, I just absolutely love talking to you. So thanks for having me on.
Up next, How to Finish Everything You Start by Janelle Yager. As I shared during our last podcast, I was going to wait on providing an overview of Janelle Yager's book because her book is kind of designed like a workbook. If you are struggling with finishing what you start, let me tell you, folks, you need to pick up this book. Jan's book not only focuses on exploring the causes of the failure to finish syndrome, but she provides us a step-by-step playbook to implementing the cure, to empower us to get better at finishing every task or project. I went through her playbook and thought I would share some of my own personal highlights. In the first few chapters, Jan takes us through a self-evaluation where I had an opportunity to assess if I actually had a problem with finishing and if I truly needed help in finishing what I cared about most, more often and efficiently. She identified for me over 20 different behaviors or bad habits that may be stopping me from finishing, such as taking on too many tasks at once, perfectionism, devaluing myself, and had me work through the top behaviors in which I possessed and developed strategies to overcome. Strategies such as creative procrastination, which essentially is restructuring my to-do list when I encounter a blockage on a facet of my project, or working on the hard thing first within my day. Making sure that if I do have a project, that I find a great place to stop. Basically, incorporating strategic delays. She also shared that I may find value in implementing rewards and when needed, seeking for help by partnering with someone. She expressed the need for deadlines, which I will tell you right now, I am adamant about. You cannot give me a task and not have a deadline, period. When I was in the workforce, it used to happen to me a lot, where I would be assigned a task and it wasn't finished. And one of the key things that I always used to ask was, okay, yeah, you assigned me the task, but what was the deadline? I was never provided one. And after I was chastised, I will tell you, after that moment, I never took on another project without demanding for a deadline date to be established. In this book, Jan, she loves acronyms. She introduced me to her acronym in which she created for finish. For the F, it meant or means to focus. Focus on that priority task. The I, ignore. Ignore interruptions or distractions. The N is for now. Now is the time, not later, not tomorrow. The I is for initiate and innovate, to inspire you to keep going. The S was for staying the course, no matter how tough it gets. And the H, hail finishing by celebrating your accomplishments. During her book, she also introduced me again to the SMART principles. Specific for the S, what will you achieve and what do you plan to do? For the M, measurable. What data will you use to decide whether you've met your goal? For the A, achievable. Am I sure that I can do this? Do I possess the right skills and resources? And if not, do I have the ability to seek for help and assign the goal or a facet of it to another resource? The R was for relevant. Does the goal align with those of your team or organization? And how will the results matter? And the T was for time bound. What is the deadline for accomplishing this goal? She also introduced me to another acronym for action, where the A was for assess, C was for control, T was for target, I was for innovate, O is for organize, and N is for now. She goes into depth, providing an overview with regards to what each of the acronyms meant. She did a really, really good job with this, and it really helped me when I was taking a look at my own goals, my own objectives, and determining how I wanted to accomplish them. In the following chapters, I had an opportunity to learn about how to leverage to-do lists, learning to say no, delegating, and when failing to finish was actually a good thing. Here, she introduced the Hemingway effect. That is where we can force ourselves to get closer to the completion of a task rather than totally abandoning it. And in doing so, we will be more driven to pick up that task again and possess a greater tendency to complete it. So essentially how I looked at this is I'm pretty goal oriented. When I set a goal for myself, and if I feel like, I'm probably not going to complete it, I need to at the least force myself to get as far as I possibly can in hopes that it will help me to pick it back up when I can pick it up and complete it. But of course, in order to do this, it is best if my goal is structured. And so this is where she dives into the Hawthorne effect. And she's shared that when you have a structured versus unstructured goal, and how I understood that was making sure that we leveraged a tool such as SMART principles to help us structure our goal. When we encounter a blockage or some sort of setback, with whatever remains to be done that has now become an unfinished task, we will be more likely to be motivated to return to it and finish it. So that was a pretty interesting concept that I appreciated she shared. She wraps up her book overall with concluding thoughts on being mindful about who I communicate my plans to. There we go again with that, being careful about who you shared with and making sure not to announce what I am doing too early. She talked about how to deal with emails, texts, or calls, organizational skills and considerations. She talked about individuals who have ADHD and seeking professional help, maybe employing a project manager. She also talked about when we might not necessarily be the problem. It might be external forces that are hindering us from being able to finish. And then she wrapped everything up with making sure you know yourself. I can't say this any more than what I'm saying now. This was a really good book. She provided amazing advice, and you definitely want to pick up this book. I'm actually going to pick it up again and leverage this book when I finish my memoir, God, The Guides of Destiny. In chapter 11, she provides a whole chapter as an example to applying these principles to finish authoring a book. Perfect timing. Thank you, my guide. I love it. If you like this overview, make sure to visit our book list on www.kinkyknotscafe.com to pick up a copy of this book on Amazon. Up next, the Tangential Mind. This month was National Yoga Month in the U.S. In the U.S., yoga is celebrated every September into October to promote the benefits of yoga and encourage a healthy lifestyle. During this month, on my social networking sites, Instagram and Facebook, at Kinky Knots Cafe, I launched the full course of Yoga Every Damn Day, where I highlighted the history and evolution of yoga equipment. We explored the asanas or yoga poses. And then I wrapped everything up with reflection techniques along with a guided meditation exercise. As I have shared in the past, yoga has been so beneficial in my life. And I wanted to pay tribute to an exercise that has brought healing into my life and will continue to be a practice in which I do every damn day. If you have not ventured out onto my Instagram or Facebook accounts, please go check it out now. That's a wrap. Join us in 2 weeks as we begin our auxiliary period. This will last for 3 months. During this period, I will be working on season 3, Ascension, the Glow Up. The season will begin in January of 2025. I am postponing, or rather strategically delaying, our launch to re-equip and restructure our podcast. Until then, we will be connecting to do what I would call a book club style podcast, checking in to get your thoughts, my thoughts on a piece of literature that I selected. The 48 Laws of Power. Yes, I am bringing back Robert Greene, who has now teamed up with Use Elfers, and together they have condensed 3,000 years of history about power into 48 essential laws by drawing from philosophies of Machiavelli, and Sun Tzu, along with others. We will learn about the need for prudence, the value of confidence, self-preservation, and other laws to equip ourselves with models for self-defense or knowledge, to gain more knowledge to better understand the rules of the game. What game? The hell if I know. But apparently there is one taking place in this thing called life. And in an effort to be safe, you and I need to better equip ourselves. So in October, we will focus on laws 1 through 19. In November, laws 20 through 35. And wrap up laws 36 through 48 in December. We will also continue our quarterly giveaway at the end of December. I will be giving away $100 in either the book choice or choices, might be more than one, for the quarter. Or you can select an item from the Kinky Knots Cafe collection. Speaking of the quarterly winner, our quarterly winner for this quarter is Charlene Stiles. Congratulations, Charlene. I will DM you the details on how to claim your prize. To access all replays or learn more about Kinky Knots Cafe's Proactive is the Way, please visit www.kinkyknotscafe.com. Proactive is the way, my friends. Take good care.